There are times that you have to admit, there are good things and bad things. And sometimes bad things can have good things. And strangely enough, in this situation, it does make me feel this way. Because yes, I know the timing feels a little off because every time this happens, it comes after a disastrous, well-deserved Moana remake failure, where people just didn't agree with having it out, but in the case of other remakes, there are things that can point in a positive direction. This is not to say what I'm about to talk about is a sure thing, but the possibility is greater than zero. At least that's how I'll put it for now. Because there is this fact that I've brought up multiple times that there is no real stopping the case of Disney remakes, only certain types of them now with the development of Tangled. Sure, one film might bomb again, but in the case of Lilo and Stitch and its sequel, shows more we can accept ones that we can like more than we hate some, and Tangled could have such a situation. This is where we have to note the possibility of the Tangled remake being good rather than bad. Now keep in mind, this is actually very early on, and the film can still more than likely end up being mediocre or bad overall, but there is a chance of it not being horrible if precedent is to go by. One where you have to bring up the other parts of where DreamWorks succeeded with How to Train Your Dragon's remake as one of the more positive reviewed ones that stuck the landing for its direction with the original director himself. A 3D film on that behalf being transformed into a live action one that worked for its type, which seems a lot to have enjoyed it and became the second highest grossing live action CGI hybrid of its type after Lilo and Stitch ironically released the same year, whom we all know was co-directed by Dean in the original film with Chris Sanders. Now this doesn't mean I like what they did or cared about that film at all, I really didn't, but when it comes to the certain case of why remakes still do well nowadays, it's about how well it connects with the audience. We understand why Moana hasn't done so, despite it being generally liked by the people who saw it, versus Snow White that everyone hated. You see this in the cinema score and general attitude, where it's not about how people like the film or not that counts in this part. Sure, it does if you want the film to be healthy in its run in theaters, but there's also the factor of its image overall. How do people feel about the idea or the world beforehand, and how does that make you want to see it or not? And with what they're trying to do with Tangled and how it was made makes for a case that they wanted to balance where people will see it. After the rough patch with some of the recent remakes, including the well-documented struggles around Snow White, Disney did put the Tangled project on pause in early 2025. They took a breath, reassessed budgets and audience appetites, and for a minute it looked like they might stay on hold. But then Lilo and Stitch did deliver those strong results, and the studio found its footing again. And by early 2026, Tangled was moving forward with real momentum. And for this one, they put together something that was solid. Director Michael Gracie, the guy behind The Greatest Showman and The Better Man, where it's a promising sign for the musical energy in the film, where it comes with this new cast like Tegan Croft, who played Raven and Titan, stepping in as Rapunzel, and Milo Manheim, the Disney Channel star himself from the Zombies franchise, taking on Flynn Rider, with Kathryn Hahn, the great actress herself fresh off of Agatha, becoming Mother Gothel. Where surprising to top it all off, Diego Luna from Andor, who we all know, actually joins into a new character for this specific remake, which puts into question things about what they're doing there. Production did kick off this year, where they're aiming for a release into 2028, seeing what they can do with this sort of film. And I'm more interested in this sort of film's direction with of course someone like Milo Manheim, but in regards to how they put it on hold after Snow White's failure and actually retook it yet again in this year means they have a plan for something that they want the film and the direction to go after their failures. And looking at the original Tangled from 2010, it wasn't just another Disney movie, it was a genuine hit that birthed the revival era of animation. The 3D era grossed around $600 million worldwide on a big budget while earning strong reviews for its animation, humor, and the songs by Alan Menken once again, and the perfect mix of adventure and heart. And of course, it mixed the past, being of course in the fairy tale image, with a new modern take and twist, because we all know the story is based on Rapunzel, but they called it Tangled, putting that new modern spin, where people connected with it right away, and it still holds up as one of the brighter spots in modern Disney animation, as I've said. And that foundation matters for a remake. When the source material has broader appeal and strong audience love, it gives the live action version something solid to build on in this version instead of fighting uphill battle like one of the more controversial moments. Which brings us back into How to Train Your Dragon, as that film was well received, returning the big hits with of course Dean, who directed it, where he kept the heart of the story intact while translating it to live action with the impressive CGI dragons, strong performances, and a tone that felt both faithful and fresh. And audiences really responded to that film, with critics calling it one of the better live action adaptations done right, praising the visuals, emotional beats, and how it respected the source while expanding certain elements like Astrid's role. It opened up strong, and climbed past $630 million worldwide, which is a good benchmark for success where it doesn't have to be a billion-dollar hit, but on a more reasonable budget like the $150 million it earned. It became solid where these remakes can actually land well, and Tangled can be in that similar position. It's a beloved self-contained story with great characters and music, and with Gracie's musical background and the cast they have assembled, there is a clear path to connect with families and nostalgic fans the same way How to Train Your Dragon did. It's not guaranteed, but the precedent is there, and it is again stronger than zero. But it's also important to be real here. None of this means that the Tangled remake is a guaranteed win at all. Remakes have always been a gamble now, and even with the places looking better on paper and Lilo & Stitch's success beforehand, the final product could still land anywhere between solid to just okay. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't love that Disney keeps going back to these live action remakes instead of trusting newer stories the way that they used to, where they're just playing it safe even while they're losing money on these recent remakes. But that being said, Tangled does feel like one of the easier adaptations to get done right instead of wrong. The original already has that strong core, the tower escape, the lantern moment, the fun dynamic between Rapunzel and Flynn, where it has clear emotional arcs that don't need massive change to work in a live action film. Like, it could blend the best of both what Lilo & Stitch remake did and of course the Cinderella remake, and with a director that knows musicals and a cast that seems well picked, they have a better shot at capturing the spirit without the kind of missteps that hurt the other projects. And you could see that favor swinging more into its direction compared to recently with Moana and Snow White. Those films ran into heavy backlash over changes and felt off to a lot of people, hurting both the vibe and the box office. Tangled does start from a warmer place in the audience's heart, and the early signs with the practical sets, the practical horsework, and a team that seems to understand the charm suggest they're aiming for something that respects what made the original click. This is not to say Moana didn't do a good job at doing that by what people have said, but it's just the fact of where you're at nostalgic wise. If it lands well, I could realistically seeing it hit the same level of enjoyment as of course Lilo & Stitch and Cinderella. I do not see this film making $1 billion, but it connects enough to feel worthwhile, and Tangled has that ingredient to do the same if they stick to the landing on the heart and the music. Still, it's early days and anything can happen between now and 2028, but right now the path looks actually clearer for Tangled than it has for some of the others, and that's why I'm willing to say it's higher than what we've seen right now. But looking forward to the bigger picture, this Tangled remake feels like one of Disney's last major tests for this whole live action strategy. They've already gone through many of their big classics through both the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and the Renaissance era, and they've shown that they're recently doing their recent films like Moana or Lilo & Stitch, but the well of the obvious choices is starting to run dry. Tangled stands out as the last true modern successes from their animation catalog that still carries broader genuine affection from audiences, and Frozen right now is more focused on becoming an epic franchise than focusing on a remake right now. And if this one delivers and connects the way it suggests, it might mean Disney might greenlight the other remakes to keep it going longer, but the reality is still increasingly left with things they don't have in the built same excitement. This is where you start seeing the talks of the films we all wanted, like Atlantis, A Treasure Planet, movies a dedicated group of fans love and want to see updated, but never reach the same cultural peak as Tangled and Moana, but they would have to do it because their well is dry. Tangled comes out after Moana and carries that weight of one of the big financial successes from the era of Disney animation. People still quote it, sing the songs, and remember the lanterns, where it has that warmth and charm that could translate if handled with care. This isn't just another project, it's a proving ground for whether this strategy still has the life it had, or applied to something that already worked beautifully not that long ago. But if Tangled stumbles the same way some of the more controversial remakes have been and can possibly do, it becomes harder for Disney to ignore that pattern. That finally at the tail end of this decade, they'll be forced to admit that simply turning animated hits 3D or 2D into live action is just not an automatic win anymore, especially as audiences grow tired of the formula and crave something new, even if they did greenlight the sequel to the live action Lilo & Stitch directed by Chris Sanders. The pause after Snow White already showed they're willing to reassess, and the Tangled miss could accelerate that shift away from that completely by the start of the 2030s. But at the end of the day, this feels like the closing chapter of an era now by the release of Tangled in 2028. Disney has proved they can still do these remakes, but Tangled might be the last great opportunity, whether that truly tests that they can continue down the road or it's time to move on and go back to fresh stories again. The possibility is still there to work, and right now, that possibility still feels higher than it has been in a while. I'm all done. Goodbye.